1 Edward 1029, copy, threatening traffic.
Copy, moving route.
Edward 1029, if you could please respond to 2020 McNeil Street, Lakeview.
Copy. If you still have run line, give me ATO information.
Welcome to Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey. I'm Brad Carlyon, your Navajo County attorney, and my partner is Casey Clark, our Navajo County sheriff. Today, our guests are with the Timber Mesa Fire Department. We have Kirk Webb and Brett Mix, who are going to help talk about some fire safety issues, because we've had a number of houses burned down early this winter season because of fireplaces and space heaters and other things. What are some of the things people need to be aware of and do every single year to ensure their home is safe from heater fires?
Well, first, with not even just talking about fireplaces or heaters or things like that, it's having smoke detectors. You know, you're like 80 times more likely to survive a house fire if you have working smoke detectors. We've been into fires where we get there and the smoke detector, we see it on the wall, it's burnt, damaged, or sometimes not at all. We'll open it up and there's no batteries. So it's like, that, you know, why even have them in the first place if you're not going to take care of them? Other times we've been in fires, we get there and it's still burning and the smoke detector's all melted and it's still trying to do its job and working, you know, so we know that those people took care of their smoke detectors.
So, you know, some folks, they take their ashes out of their wood stove or fireplace, and some put them in a metal container. I've seen them put them in plastic containers, then they put them on their porch. How long can those embers stay hot?
You know, they can
stay hot at least a week, maybe even up to 2 weeks. So we suggest not only putting them in a metal can, but not putting them on a porch. Put them on a concrete surface or non-combustible surface and let them cool for a week or two. If you can still feel heat in that can, don't dump them out until you can't feel any heat.
You can put them on the ground, but make sure that's clear to pine needles and so forth.
Right.
And it's something that works really great for gardens. If you're the type of person who has a garden or has a neighbor who has a garden, it puts that nitrogen back in the soil. Right. Mm-hmm. Does really well.
But you want to make sure they're cooled before you spread them.
Absolutely.
Right. The wind otherwise.
So dousing it with water prior to dumping them is a good thing too.
Okay, good.
And what about fireplaces and cleaning chimneys? How long does it take to get a chimney all clogged up with the soot and other stuff that comes in there?
A lot of that depends on what you're burning. If you're burning wood that was just freshly cut down and it was still green when you cut it, and it's not been cured properly, so cured means it's had time to dry out. So all of the tree sap, the stuff, the water content that's inside of the trees, if that's not dried sufficiently, that creates creosote inside your chimney. And different types of woods will create the creosote faster than others. Pine is always, you know, we have an abundance of pine up here. A lot of people are scared to burn it, but it's mainly just because they try to burn it before it's too dry enough. But even juniper, oak, all those other kinds of woods, any kind of wood that's still not cured, can create that creosote. And what that does is it coats the inside of the chimney. And I've even seen it where it can't even see all the way through an 8-inch pipe because it's so clogged up with creosote and soot and everything else. And that stuff is basically what it is unburned fuel. So it dries out in the chimney, and once it gets to a certain temperature, that can actually create and ignite. And we've even seen sometimes where it's shooting flames up out of the chimney 10, 20 feet in the air.
You know, we were talking earlier, and you talked about some of the blow-in insulation where people have gotten it too close, or it's been there for a long time, but it's not fire retardant, or it is, but...
Yeah, and they have chemicals in there that makes it fire resistive, but over time that stuff still wears down and it can catch fire. We saw a very significant fire a couple of years ago up in one of our areas that and what we found investigating that fire was that the blown-in insulation got around the outside of that chimney pipe, and And even though it was a triple wall pipe,
Right.
it still got hot enough, and over time it caught fire and pretty much destroyed the house.
Is there a rule of thumb on space heaters, or I mean, if you read them, they always say 2 foot or 3 foot from the wall, but is there something that you folks recommend on space heaters?
I would say keep them at least 3 foot away from any combustible material, not only walls, but drapes, curtains, furniture, stuff like that that can preheat, and eventually that material will break down and become more vulnerable to catch fire.
Is there, I know some people, which I wouldn't do, but they leave them on all night, or if they're not at home.
We don't suggest that.
Right.
You know, we suggest to turn them off when you're not at home, kind of like lanterns or candles or stuff like that. That any ignition source other than your normal furnace in a house, turn that off when you're not at home.
Right. And even our furnaces, you know, they need to be inspected and checked,
Right.
and the filters, just having a clogged filter can cause issues and problems and become
Carbon
that heat
monoxide
source.
or-
Exactly, all different kinds of issues going on with that.
What about the wood pellet stoves that seem to be popular? Are there some risks that you've been seeing with those too?
You know, same thing with pellet stoves. It's got the same exhaust. Now, granted, the exhaust is much smaller because they do typically burn more efficiently. But here again, you've got a wood burning appliance that has flame, actual flame. So, and it's got to create that same ash and soot and the potentially creosote, but it's not as common because all the pellets, when they're made, they actually dry that wood down to a certain percentage. So they're actually forcing it to be cured before it can become a pellet. But there's still, you still got to clean that out. It's still going to have residue that can be, can cause a chimney fire.
So these checking on your filters, your furnaces, your chimneys, and everything else, is that something the average homeowner can do? And if so, how do they go about doing it? Is there a little checklist they should be going through?
Can they call you folks?
You know, we get that call quite often, and Brent, he's still a captain on the truck, and so how often do you guys get called to come check stoves and?
You know, we can come out whenever somebody calls us. We can inspect it, but as far as cleaning it for them, we can't really do that on duty. But we Googled 4 different places right up here on the mountain that can not only come to your house and clean, but they can inspect it after cleaning. And that's key. Some people clean it on their own, and they might dislodge a pipe from another pipe in that attic space. And if an ember gets out of that pipe into that blown insulation, we've seen that too,
Yep.
to where it'll cause an attic fire. And so
So that's, then the folks can call Timber Mesa Fire Department, and you guys will come out and do an inspection around their house, the chimney flues, or, you know.
Well, and it's not going to be a comprehensive
Right.
inspection. We can just do a general look, see, type of deal, because we're not those licensed professionals.
Right.
We usually get after the fact.
It's too late.
And then we find out, yeah, it looks like there was a break in the pipe here, or whatever might have been the case. But there's people out there, our stove companies, there's like Ace Hardware, there's one down on Woodland Road, different places that have these, and they actually install the stoves, and they work very well with getting that put in correctly. Some of the contractors can do that kind of stuff. But as far as cleaning them, yeah, it's something that could you do it yourself? Sure. But do we recommend having somebody that's licensed and professional at doing that? Absolutely. Because like you said, you never know what you may have dislodged in there, or maybe the pipe's getting too thin. Some of these places will actually have a camera that they can run up and down the pipe and inspect the integrity of the pipe.
You know, we have a couple holidays coming up. We have a lot of people that are going to deep fry turkeys, which I've seen a lot of videos, and a lot of times that doesn't work out well.
Right.
Do you have some suggestions on that?
The biggest one is follow the directions.
Read the directions first. Huh?
I know. Typically, us as guys don't like to read the directions and stuff, but I know how to do this, But no, following the directions.
And make sure that your turkey is completely thawed. A lot of people think that you can just put a frozen turkey in hot oil. That does not work.
Doesn't work very well.
So make sure, that you read all the directions.
Well, and the other thing too here, like with the ashes, don't do it on your combustible wood porch.
Right.
Because now if you do have an effect like that, say it does get out of hand, well, now you're not going to have your porch, which is connected to your house, which then
Right.
goodbye house.
Well, I've seen there's been a big push, and I'm seeing a lot more recently of the greaseless turkey fryers. I don't know if you've seen those or not.
I haven't.
Yeah, there's no grease. Matter of fact, I bought one because my wife's like, I don't think that you're...
You don't read the directions?
No. We also have Christmas coming up. Any safety tips with Christmas trees or Christmas lights?
Well, make sure that you have the proper amount of lights connected together. I think with the lights come directions. You don't want to plug in more than 5 strands. That's usually the maximum. Make
Even
sure
on the LED ones?
Well, the LEDs are a little cooler than the older ones that we used to have when we were kids, and but they still recommend 5 or less on the LEDs.
And you mean don't do the Chevy Chase with the Christmas Vacation video? We got everything plugged in. Well, and the other thing with trees too, if you're using a live tree or one that's been freshly cut, making sure it stays watered. Because it's amazing how much, and so even if you go into the stores and purchasing them, take and run your hands across the pine needles, and if they're falling off when you're at the store, you probably don't want to purchase that one, because that's a good indication it's already drying out to the point where keeping it watered is not going to help that tree.
Well, a lot of those trees were cut last month.
Exactly.
And they're going to be selling them here, or 2 months ago, so. Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate your time and joining us and giving us some of these safety tips. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
You bet.
And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey. Our guest for this segment is MCAT Commander Randy Moffitt. MCAT is the Major Crimes Apprehension Team, which serves as the Drug Task Force in Navajo County. Thank you for joining us, Randy.
Thank you for having us.
One of the things we brought you on today's show for is an innovative card that Sheriff Clark and you came up with to help go after the local drug dealers. Can you tell us about what you guys done?
You bet. We've made a card that we will be distributing throughout Navajo County. And the card says specifically, attention drug dealers. Is your drug dealing competition costing you money? We offer a free service to help you eliminate your drug competition. The card is meant to go to concerned citizens. It'll also go to individuals who are involved in illegal drug trafficking. They can provide information to the Major Crimes Apprehension Team, and we will conduct an investigation based on these cards. Also, the second part of the card, which is very amazing, is it has resources for people to call who may be suffering from drug addiction. So it gives these people the ability to get the help and the assistance that they need from their drug addiction.
For a concerned citizen, can they fill out that card and get it to your office anonymously, or do they have to provide information?
They can fill it out anonymously. We're never going to release their names, and it has our phone number, and they can hand it to any deputies. You can hand it to any police officer throughout the county, and it'll get back to us, and we'll open up an investigation.
Or you can take the number and call in.
Yes.
And directly into MCAT.
Since it's anonymous, do you treat that type of a tip differently than if somebody would say, I'm Brad Carlyon and here's the information I have, or do you treat them both the same?
You know, we treat them differently, specifically because we want to have people, law-abiding citizens, frequently give us information, but they do not want to be identified. So when we get an anonymous tip, we don't want to identify who that tipster was. We want to be able to conduct a criminal investigation without identifying them and protect their identity. They're far more likely to call us more than once.
And then do you really expect drug dealers to fill out the cards on their competition?
I absolutely do. They want to knock off their competition. There is no loyalty in drug dealing. They will identify the people who are selling drugs specifically to possibly obtain more ill-gotten gains and promote their business. So I would be behooved if we didn't get quite a few from people who are actually involved in illegal activity.
And you already get those anyway.
We do. So we've been working that since the history of MCAT.
How long have you been involved in going after narcotics dealers?
I have been in the field of narcotics for about 13 years. This is my second task force running and supervising, and then I was an agent in a task force at one time.
So have you seen the impact of what a drug dealer moving into the community can have on that community, the quality of life?
I have, and I really pride myself on the work that we do. I pride myself on being able to remove those individuals. You see the impact not only to the families, the devastation of what ill-gotten drugs or illegal drugs do to them. You see burglaries, you see victim crimes, you see everything increasing with illegal drugs. So when we can remove somebody from our communities and we can notify people that, hey, by the way, we've removed this person, it's value. It's value not that you just can never put a price on. It's value to make the quality of life better for the citizens of Navajo County.
I know there's a joke about Sheriff Joe Pyro that he was, when he's in DEA, he was a nickel bag Joe because he went after the small little dealers. And you go after the small dealers in the community, but do you try to work those cases back to get the person who's supplying them and the person who's supplying that middleman and work it back that way?
Yes, we have a lot of the ability to chase individuals not only in Navajo County, but people who are importing drugs from other counties throughout the state. If there's a nexus and we can tie that nexus to illegal drugs coming into our community, frequently we'll travel to Phoenix, we'll work with detectives from their bureaus or their agencies, and we'll say, hey, we'll give them a command briefing, this is what we have, this is what we're going to accomplish today, and we'll arrest those individuals as they're selling drugs to people who are transporting drugs to Navajo County.
What's some of the, in the last year, Randy, what's some of the stats that MCAT, some of the drugs that have taken out of the community, interstate, highways, I don't know if you have a total for everything or?
One of the things that we do at MCAT is we track the quality and the quantity of drugs that we brought in. From October 2014 to October 2015, the task force has made 236 arrests of people who are selling drugs. For cocaine, we've recovered 6.25 kilograms. Hash.
What's a kilogram for?
How much is that?
So that's great question. A kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So we've covered almost 13, 14 pounds of cocaine.
And how much is a dosage of cocaine?
A dosage of cocaine is about 1/10 of a gram.
So there's a lot of dosages in that 12, 13 pounds that you got.
That's correct. So,
A lot of heartache.
a lot of heartache, a lot of devastation with families. One of the things with methamphetamine, we've recovered 11,935 grams of methamphetamine. So we kind of changed the way we broke that down into grams. You get about 10 dosage units out of a gram, and that's valued at about $642,000 in our community, illegal drugs that were removed by the Drug Task Force. Marijuana, we've recovered 1,097 pounds with a value of $677,000. And then prescription pills, we have a value of about $10,000, and we still see that on the rise with different investigations that we're conducting with prescription pills throughout our community.
Which leads into heroin addiction many times, and of course we do have the drop boxes across the county now also.
Yes.
To get rid of the prescription drugs.
There's a huge nexus between prescription drugs and the connection to heroin. With heroin, we recovered 5,288 grams, and that has a street value of $442,147.
Well, it's catching up to methamphetamine as a high volume drug in the community then.
It is, and unfortunately, the bad news is we have located a pretty strong heroin ring in our communities here, but I'm pretty thrilled to report that Not only did we arrest the individual selling the heroin in our communities, we again worked that investigation to Phoenix, and we arrested the individual providing the heroin. And I remember going to talk to the task forces down there, and I said, yes, this isn't going to be the largest individual selling heroin, but this is the individual that is solely responsible for bringing heroin to our communities. It meant a lot to the detectives, especially when he was apprehended.
So Randy, I mean, I get asked the question all the time, is are the drugs in Navajo County or in the city of Show Low or Holbrook or Winslow, is it any worse than any other part of the state? And I believe we're about the same. It's just a plague across our state and our country.
I think it's probably about the same or maybe a little bit less because we're making it so difficult for these individuals to bring drugs into our community. The other day, I had the opportunity to work 24 hours straight, but it was worth it to catch that individual who had been transporting meth into our community for a very long time. We sat out there and waited for that individual, and we were successful to remove that person.
So the numbers that you just gave us, how does that compare from the prior year and the years prior? Are we seeing an increase or a decrease in the drugs? It sounds like heroin's going up and methamphetamine staying about the same or maybe dropping some.
You know, we've had a reduced seizure with our methamphetamine, and the reason being is the year prior to that we had a very large methamphetamine seizure. We recovered 58 pounds of methamphetamine. Our heroin is going up slightly. Our methamphetamine is definitely going down. And we're really proud of the hard work of our task force and the ability for us to go out and apprehend these individuals.
So in our task force, well, who's all on it, and do any of them have any special certifications or?
Great question. So our task force is a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional task force. We can start with Winslow Police Department has detectives. Navajo County Sheriff's Office has supervisors and detectives assigned to our task force. The Show Low Police Department has a supervisor, and he is a detective and he's also a special response team member. So we have tactical officers. We have Snowflake Taylor Police Department assigned to our task force, and we have Pine Top Lakeside assigned to our task force. One of the
DPS, are they involved?
You bet, and sorry, the Department of Public Safety as well assigned to our task force. One of the things we really pride ourselves on our task force is we truly watch what's going on in our communities. And with that being said, MCAT's not only about narcotics interdiction. We identify burglars, we follow those burglars, and frequently if the law enforcement agency is not arresting those burglars, we'll arrest them ourselves. And so we are eliminate not only the dangerous drugs and the crimes associated with drug abuse, but we're arresting individuals who are doing property crimes and taking our valuables from our residences.
Which are tied back to drug dealers, I mean.
Specifically, direct relation tied directly back to our drug dealers.
Well, Randy, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and letting the citizens know about filling out the cards and getting you guys the tips to help get rid of more drug dealers. And Casey, do you have this month's Most Wanted for us?
You know, our Most Wanted this month is drug dealers. And I would really encourage folks to, as these cards go out across the community, if you find one or need some, we'll go to homeowners associations or wherever and drop them off. Drug dealers, as much like Randy has said, are tied to the quality of life in each community. They're a plague on society. They child crimes, burglary, homicides, assaults. So our Most Wanted is the drug dealers in Navajo County. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this month's Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey. And we look forward to joining you again next month.